Hey, welcome back to Unapologetically Mom. This is the space where we talk about some real stuff. Sometimes the messy, sometimes the beautiful, often exhausting, brave stuff that motherhood brings. I'm Tara, and today I want to talk about something that feels small, maybe on the surface, but it goes way deeper than we sometimes realize. Why it's so hard to just say thank you, and why we need to stop apologizing for every little thing. If you've ever felt awkward accepting a compliment, even the smallest compliment, and if you catch yourself saying sorry for things that don't even need an apology, if you downplay your wins sometimes or maybe second guess your worth, yeah, okay, this one's going to be for you. So let's just start. Let's talk about what's really behind that discomfort we sometimes feel and how we start to shift it or can start to shift it. Just one honest, messy, powerful moment at a time. So, do you ever respond to compliments like this old thing or it was nothing, believe me, or maybe, oh, I just got lucky, or, and I've done this, these are two of the things that I've done several times. I might say, oh man, I look exhausted, or I just threw this together. If you've said any of these things, then you probably can put a compliment before it, right? And you know what? We can maybe laugh about it, but when you really think about it, it's actually kind of sad because somewhere along the way, we learned to brush off kindness, right? We learned to shrink in response to somebody else maybe paying attention to us. Have you ever seen a little girl, okay, like age 2 to 6 or so? Think about that little girl. How does she represent herself? Usually very confident, right? Usually she's sassy and with strong boundaries. Sometimes she'll say, hey, get off of me, or smack a hand away, or something like that. Am I wrong? So then what happens to her? Because by the time she's a teen, usually she is really self conscious. Maybe her self esteem may be weak. And now I want you to know it's about time to maybe find our true self again. So let me just tell you just a quick story, personal story. I was in an IEP meeting, those meetings where you feel like you're the only one in the whole damn room who really knows your kid. And okay, after this really grueling, energy sucking meeting that I had, the teacher assistant came up to me in the parking lot and he said, you know what? You were really amazing in there. You spoke so confidently and really stuck to your guns. I wish I could do that with my own kid. And you know what I said? I said, no, I cried before I walked in. I really had to practice so much of that in the car on the way over here. And, I just sometimes really fake it well. And, why couldn't I just say, thank you? Why couldn't I just receive that gift? It's because we've been taught that humility means shrinking, that to be kind or likable, we have to be small. But we need to really be clear. Humility is not invisibility. And what if accepting that compliment was actually an act of rebellion? Maybe it's an act of our healing, or maybe it's an act of just starting that empowerment journey, that self empowerment journey. So, I want to just add, okay, here's why this matters so much and why I'm here to talk about it. Because when we deflect those compliments, we're actually not just being humble. We are reinforcing a belief that we don't deserve to be seen, praised, or celebrated. We're reinforcing that to ourselves every single time we do it. And guess who's watching? Our kids, right? Of course. So no matter what age they are, they could be toddlers, they could be teenagers, or even adults. They could be verbal or nonverbal, neurotypical or neurodivergent. It doesn't matter. They still are going to absorb, how we treat ourselves. So when we let ourselves be seen and valued, when we say Thank you. That means a lot. They learn that they can too. Okay. So just try it. Maybe just once this week. And I challenge you, when someone compliments you, maybe about your hair, about your style, about your parenting, or even your energy, instead of brushing it off, say, thank you. I appreciate that. That's it. No other explanation. Just take it. Take the compliment. Try it once. And you know what? It might feel awkward. It might feel icky just because it's different. And you know why? Because we're so used to doing that our brain has recognized that pattern and it feels comfortable to continue to do it. But if we go against what our brain is trying to tell us, then it's going to feel uncomfortable no matter what, even if it's in a positive direction. So just say it, let it land in your mind and in your body and let it nourish you. I bet, okay, when you were maybe 3 or 4, and someone said to you, oh, you look so pretty, I bet you anything, you probably said, yes, I do, or I know, right? And speaking of what our kids are learning, because sometimes we forget that they're not just learning from our words, they're actually learning from what the world reflects back to them. And school, okay, they are getting a lot of this at school. And you know what, let's just talk about school for a minute, because it is really hot on my mind right now. All right, it's towards the end of the school year. Yes, things should be, going a little more smoothly, I would think, or whatever. But right now, my ninth grader is failing 3 classes. Okay, this is not easy to say, it's not easy to talk about, but he's failing 3 classes this semester. And last semester, he was getting all A's and B's. So what the heck happened? Of course, I am dealing with this. I've got an IEP meeting called and everything else. But I want to say it out loud because I don't think I'm the only one who may be dealing with this right now. And just as a reminder, those failing grades isn't a failing kid, doesn't mean a failing kid, and it doesn't mean a failing parent, a failing mom. So school can be brutal, okay, especially for our neurodivergent kids. The pressures they have to perform socially, emotionally, and academically just nonstop. And when a teen struggles with things like executive functioning, whatever, the planning, organizing, maybe just remembering assignments, or if they're struggling with processing speed, my gosh, just keeping up with class discussions, they can look to anyone who doesn't really understand their brain. They can look like they're lazy. They can look like they don't care. And that's where a lot of the struggle lies. So just think about that, because we know that's not what's happening. What's really happening is that overload. And it's really hard to convince people of this. Believe me, I've tried, maybe you've tried, and it gets so frustrating. So we know it. And, that's where we need to start. And then, oh my gosh, you have to think on top of all that, if they're teenagers, well, we've got hormones, mood swings, identity shifts, trying to figure out just who they are in this system that tells them who they should be, right? Okay. And here's something that I've really noticed, and I want you to think about this with your own kid, because we can get really caught up in our own stress and the day to day stuff. It's hard to notice sometimes what's really going on, and that's fine. That's, normal, right? But I started to notice, or just started to really pay attention. My grandson, during the school week, okay, he started becoming withdrawn and stressed and almost robotic. But then on the weekends, he'll laugh. He's more open. He eats better. He's more himself, right? So that's what's telling me that school right now is really demanding more than his system can handle. Okay. So that was a big red flag. So what I've done is I've just stopped trying to control the outcome, and I've started paying closer attention to all these signs, to maybe his shifts in energy, in personality, and spirit. And I'm realizing that our role as parents isn't just to get them to pass, right? It's to help them feel safe enough to show up fully, even if that looks different than we expected. So maybe we should stop measuring our kids and ourselves by these outdated standards. Let's start getting curious. Let's hold space for them. You know your kid better than anyone. So listen to your gut and follow your intuition because you're not failing if your kid is struggling. You're just not. You're showing up, you're observing, you're adjusting. And that's what real parenting really looks like. Okay. So, which brings me to the next thing I said we were going to talk about, and that's apologizing. Apologizing possibly for taking up space, for needing help, for not being on all the time. We say things, and this is something that, maybe you can relate to. We say things like, I'm sorry I look like a mess, or sorry, this is probably a dumb question, but you may say, sorry, I need to reschedule, or sorry, I'm so tired today. But you know what? Are we really sorry? Should we really be sorry? Or are we just apologizing just because we're used to it? Apologizing for our existence, maybe? So I had a friend one time in this conversation, and it relates directly to apologizing. This is exactly why I brought this up, because she told me that she apologized to the pediatrician because she was crying. She was crying and upset because, there were just so many things going on and she was, just so worried about her kid and stuff like that. Then she said that same week, she apologized to the grocery store clerk for not getting her debit card out more quickly. Okay. Then she apologized to her own kid for just being tired at dinner. That's when I kind of asked her, I was like, okay, this all happened in a week. I said, what would happen if you told the truth instead of saying sorry? Because you really don't owe the world an apology for being yourself, for being real, for being tired, for parenting through these storms and for not performing your pain away. Okay. No, okay, here's something else. It reminds me, this is outside of parenting because I think it happens all the time. And I know we're talking about parenting here or whatever, but I go to restorative yoga. I try to go once a week. And very recently, I was in a yoga class, getting ready for restorative yoga, and I know the instructor pretty well now because I've been going for about a year. And so we have, little light conversations, maybe, a little laughter, joking or whatever beforehand as we're all getting ready. And, it's supposed to be one of these quiet spaces getting ready for. And there were only a few of us in the class that day. Okay. It was just me, the instructor, and then 3 other women. So I was having this conversation with the instructor and one other woman, just warm human connection, right? What's wrong with that? But then as soon as the class actually started, everything was quiet, the music was on. The woman next to me broke down and started crying like really loud. And then she became really upset. And she was upset that we had talked before class started and that we were joking, that there was, this conversation. And she was like, it ruined the experience for her. She wasn't expecting this. And she was just really, really upset. And even though the instructor kindly told her that this was a space for everyone, she still said that she needed to leave. Okay. So the instructor was like, this is a space for everyone. We want to be here for you. I'm here for you, whatever. And then this is what hit me the hardest. The instructor, this kind, grounded person I've always admired, she said, I'm sorry. I won't do that again. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. And then the woman decided to stay. And you know what? In that moment, I felt it. I felt it deep in my chest. And I felt like, oh my gosh, she's shrinking herself. She was apologizing for being friendly, just for laughing, for connecting, for being just human. My gosh. And yes, the woman who cried absolutely had a right to her feelings. Okay. I don't want to dismiss that at all. I believe everyone deserves space for their experience. But what I realized in that moment is this. Her reaction wasn't anyone else's fault. It wasn't the instructor's fault. It wasn't mine. It was actually something inside her that was triggered. something unhealed or hurting. And instead of processing that, she made it someone else's responsibility. And what hurt was watching someone I respect, this amazing yoga instructor, which she is amazing. I just love her to death. It made her feel like she had to make herself smaller to soothe someone else's discomfort. And we do that, right? Don't we? Especially as women, especially as moms. We apologize sometimes for our joy, right? Maybe our voice, maybe our presence. We edit ourselves to sometimes avoid upsetting anyone in the room. And sometimes we forget that, you know what? We're allowed to be here. We're allowed to be ourselves too, just like anybody else. So if you've ever been in that situation, if you've ever silenced yourself to make someone else more comfortable, I want you to know you're not responsible for other people's unhealed stuff. Okay? You can be kind without shrinking. You can be compassionate without absorbing all the blame or any blame. And you can take up space, even in a yoga class, and still be rooted in love. Just let that land for a second here. And in order to let that really sink in, I want to take a breath together. Now, if you can, if you're driving or something, or you're doing something really important, please don't do this, but I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, because right now I think we just hit some heavy stuff. And if you're able to, like I said, close your eyes. And I'm going to ask you, just listen carefully, I'm going to ask you to inhale for a count of 4. And during that count of 4, I want you to just try to feel love, like you're breathing in just love. Hold it for 2 seconds, and then I want you to exhale for a slow count of 6 to 8 through your mouth. So you're going to inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. When you exhale, I want you to release that feeling of love. Okay? So inhale for a count of 4. Hold it. And then exhale for a count of 8. Now, say this with me. I am allowed to take up space. I am allowed to feel proud of myself. I don't have to explain or shrink. This is what unapologetic motherhood looks like. It's not perfect. It's not polished. It's not performative. It's just true, right? Authentic. So this week, here's your challenge here's your invitation, I should say, to a challenge. Okay, I want you this week, take the compliment, okay? Just take one compliment, say thank you, and feel it. Whether it feels yucky or not, it doesn't matter, because you'll get through it, all right? Maybe ditch one apology. Stop yourself, or at least observe, right? And then also observe what your child's experience is really telling you. And just stay soft with yourself through it all, okay? Don't be hard on yourself. You are worthy of rest, of kindness, of being celebrated, all right? And in case no one told you this week or this month or whatever, you're doing an incredible job, even when it's hard, and especially when it's hard. And if this episode hit home, I'd love to invite you to something special, okay? Next week, I'm hosting a free webinar just for moms, okay? I'm going to take you from burnout to balance, to calm the chaos, okay? It's happening on May 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to talk about exactly how to start reclaiming your energy, your peace, and your presence without needing to change your entire life, okay? You don't need to do any more or less. You need to do what you're doing right now, just with more ease. So it's going to be real talk. I'm going to give you real strategies, and I'm going to give you real hope. And you'll also get access to my free downloadable workbook. And I'll introduce that to you at the end of the webinar, and then I'll get you the link, because that's your next step to some more clarity and confidence, to really practice this stuff and really try to get it deep into your brain. Okay. And the link to register is in the show notes in the episode description here. So I really hope to see you there because peace is actually possible. So until next time on Unapologetically Mom, stay rooted, stay real, take up space. Okay. I love you. See you next time.